welcome to this Fierce Mind educational series powered by Toughness. And this one in this Fierce Mind educational series is going to be Embrace the Suck. We're going to tell everything about mental toughness. And I'm looking forward to it because there's a lot to tell when it comes to mental toughness. Something that I've really noticed just before we get started, before we're going to dive into this very intriguing and inspiring topic. Something that I've really noticed is that, the idea and the feeling and also the understanding that mental toughness is a very important component when it comes to the true ability to peak perform. That is really growing. That understanding is growing. I notice it all around me when I talk to players, athletes, coaches, trainers. That understanding that mental toughness is a very important part when it comes to peak performance. That's really growing, and that's awesome. I'm very excited about that because we already came a long way in that area. So I always say, let's say I'm talking to a trainer, say, okay, that's great that you truly have the feeling and that you have that understanding that mental toughness is an essential part of the ability to peak perform. And then I ask the next question. I say, okay, it's great that you think that that's important. So how do you train it? How do you apply mental toughness into your day-to-day practice? And then it usually stays too quiet. When it comes to skills, there's usually a very structural program when it comes to skill training. When it comes to the training of the physique, physical training, it's also usually a very structured program. And then we come to this mental toughness topic, which we all say like, oh, it's so important, we need it, obviously a big component of peak performance. And then there's not really a lot there. And if there's something there, it's usually just a little bit here, a little bit that, but it's not like a structural program. It's not structurally integrated into that day-to-day practice. And honestly, I cannot blame anybody for that, because a big problem, in my opinion, when it comes to mental toughness is that the understanding about what mental toughness now truly is also very vague still. I haven't done it in this educational course. Like, we can Google mental toughness, and when we Google it, we see multiple definitions. That's already a problem. But even if we just take a definition and we read through the definition, after doing all that, it's still vague. You know what I mean? It's still not really, for a lot of people, that have a little bit of a feeling with it, but I still don't really grasp what it now is. And obviously, if that's the case, if you don't really know what it is or kind of like what it exists of, how can you train it? How can you translate it in day-to-day practice? And that is the biggest problem that I encounter when it comes to mental toughness. And that's why I invented and designed this educational course, because I'm sure after this educational course, you truly have a feeling about what mental toughness is. You can observe mentally tough behavior, because that's very important. But even more important, you know how to train it. You know the layers out of which mental toughness is built. And if you know that, you know truly where it exists out of. And we take a little bit of knowledge out of research, we take knowledge out of my day-to-day practice, we take knowledge out of the military. So we really have this broad scope when it comes to mental toughness. But if you know the layers, you can train it. And it's as simple as that. So that's what we're going to do in this course, and that's what we're going to talk about. For me, mental toughness, it has all to do with the ability to keep on executing your task no matter what is going on. Because when it comes to performance, and that's out of my day-to-day practice, I work with a lot of athletes, and as soon as their performance is declining, I get a lot of excuses. It's the weather, it's the referee, it's social media, they didn't sleep well, they didn't have a good feeling, it's their teammates. It's a lot of external sources. But something that we have to realize when it comes to peak performance is that we are responsible for our own performance, and we are in control over our own performance, way more in control than we give ourselves credit to. And that's a good thing, because that means that we can really steer our performance into the direction that we want. But when it comes to mental toughness, it is the ability to perform, to execute the task that we need to execute to come towards our goal, no matter what's going on the outside. So there can be a lot going on, a lot of stimuli kind of like really grabbing at your attention. But you can shove it to the side and you're able to still kind of like continue in taking actions in those tasks that you need to do. That form of behavior, that form of adaptability, that for me is the true essence of mental toughness. So I hope that gives you a little bit of more of a feeling like, hey, what does mental toughness look like? So in this educational program, we're going to talk more about what does mental toughness look like? How can we observe it? For ourselves, or if you're a trainer or coach, how can you observe if your team or your players are mentally tough? What does it look like? How can we train it? What does the science say that it's kind of like built up upon? What do I say? What have I found out in my day-to-day practice? And what has the military to say about it? It's all in this course, and I'm sure after this course you got a very good idea and you really can, translate it into your day-to-day practice. Because if you know what it is, you can kind of like get that knowledge transferred into practices so you can really train the different layers of mental toughness and become more mentally tough yourself, or your players or your team become more mentally tough. So having all that said, let's dive right into this educational course. I'm looking forward, and let's get started.